natural human mind has evolved over millions of years to have a number of amazing capabilities that make Homo sapiens a special kind of living organism. And yet, the normal education today does not develop those capabilities. We like to call them powers. And if you develop them properly, they become superpowers that you can use, especially in the world of work. Now, as Homo sapiens evolved, it was necessary for them to be able to find food, avoid danger, and those kinds of activities. But now, in the world of work, situations are quite complex and very fast changing. In the old days, a person could adapt to their environment, and what was going to happen was pretty predictable. They could get out of their cave in the morning and go and look for a rabbit or whatever it was they were hunting for, and it would have been pretty much the same story as the day before. But now, in our modern society, things change a lot, and they change quickly. So it's important for you to develop the capability to be able to analyze situations very quickly and decide on what your behavior is going to be. Now, to do that, you need to develop thinking tools, just as cavemen and so on developed other tools for hammers and for cutting and for making their clothes and so on. So you can make tools for yourself. And what we do here in this video is start to introduce you to the concept of useful tools that you can use. They are thinking tools. We've already talked about one such tool, which is 5W2H. You can use that as a tool to analyze situations. And in this video, we take the example of going on a course at Stanford University and what it costs and how long it takes and so on, to start using another tool called the levels tool. And during the rest of these videos, you will see us introduce various thinking tools that are going to help you a lot.
Repeat what you said. I don't know if you captured it. So item 2 on our agenda is
Stanford Business School.
And I said, yo, let's go for it.
Yes.
Okay, so ball's in your court now.
Okay. Well, I looked at, like we mentioned earlier.
Like or as?
As we mentioned earlier, the who, what, why, when, where, how, and how much.
Okay.
And
it's called 5W2H in English language. Of course, those words, who, what, why, when, where, it could be key.
Yeah, different languages.
Bonde or or whatever. So it wouldn't work as 5W2H in other places. But it is fundamental. So it's a great way to analyse something or think critically. Off you go.
The course stood out to me most. I think it's a 2-year course by the looks of it.
So we're getting the answers to our questions, aren't we?
Yes, we are.
So if I were to trap them here then. So we're doing 5W2H for Stanford, yeah? So what have you told me so far?
2-year course.
How long then? How long?
Yeah, how long?
Okay,
Which I guess could be, that's when almost, isn't it? Because
let's use this as a model for using 5W2H in an intelligent way. Okay, so the first thing you told me was it's 2 years. All right, so that's 2 years. The information, the data is, it's 2 years. So that gives us a quantitative piece of information. 2 is a very commonly used quantitative measure, and years is also.
Yeah.
Here's an example of a rat hole. What's a year?
365 days.
Okay. Now, is an academic year a year?
it's the same amount of time, just beginning at a different place to what you typically say a year was. It doesn't start January the 1st. It would start September, typically, an academic year. The cycle of an academic year is still the same amount of time if you include holidays.
When you go to university and you do a 3-year course,
Mm-hmm.
do those years always follow each other, one after the other? Like you start in 2018 and it finishes in 18, 19, 20? 3 academic years?
They do follow each other, yes. As if you start uni, you start a 3-year course in 2018, you're expected to do 3 consecutive years at that university.
And are you there all year?
Depends on the university. Some universities you're there for, I think the Stanford Business School, there are 3 terms.
3 terms, okay, let's just do it. Now what we're doing now is we're going, at layer 1, it's 2 years. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to go down to layer 2,
Mm-hmm.
and potentially we can go down in more detail to layer 3. Okay. So now we've gone. I've taken calendar years and I've invited you to think of them as academic years. And now we're going down to layer 2. So you're going to give me some information now about the Stanford academic years. So what is an academic year at Stanford?
3 terms.
3 terms. But what would be a layer 3 question for 3 terms?
What's included within your 3 terms? As in, how's an individual term broken up?
Well, but we're going down the time funnel here now. We're going down time.
Okay.
And you just switched it to what? Okay. So my layer 3 question is in the time silo, as it were.
So, how long's an individual term?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you see the...
Yeah.
Yeah? How long is a term? Do you have that information?
No, but I can... It's going to be the same as any university over here.
Is it?
I think, yeah, by the sounds of it. We have 3 terms typically for our unis here.
Okay.
So I imagine a term is about 2 months.
Okay, so we're now measuring it in months.
2 months.
2 months.
I don't know. I could be really off.
What would be a level 4 question then?
How many hours a day?
Would be going right down, yes.
Yeah.
Well, we were on months there.
Yeah.
So we'd gone from years to academic years to terms to months. What's the kind of...
Days. Weeks.
Which would normally come first?
Weeks.
Because we're going
down
from the largest to the smallest.
But it's like
2 months, yeah? How many weeks?
Well, I wouldn't say that's adding another layer just to say that's 8 weeks. I think that's given in the fact it's 2 months. I'd say personally, I might be wrong because you know a lot better than I do in terms of this, but moving down another layer would be breaking down what's within that 2 months and not just with what's within the week.
And that is a terrific interrupt, because generally speaking, and I suggest to you while you're saying that, is you are subconsciously aware that having too many levels and too many layers gets in the way of clear thinking.
This is a fundamental stage in this Skills for Life course because it highlights the difference between an academic approach to reasoning and a practical approach. What Corben is touching on here is the academic area of terms and propositions and categories and Platonic forms. It's a very interesting, and I find it a fun area, but it's no use to you at all when you're confronted with a business situation. And that's why we have focused on the practicality of helping the student develop practical tools. We don't go into syllogisms and all that sort of stuff. And we suggest to you that if you do spend time looking up formal logic, and there's a schism between philosophical logic and mathematical logic, all of these things are a time trap and a minefield for your brain. And we strongly recommend you just hang in there with the IPL.org practical approach to thinking. You will get everything that an in-depth Aristotelian education would give you. We've studied it for dozens and dozens of years. And what we've done is extract from all that what really works, what's going to be useful to you in this modern competitive world. You don't have to go around showing people how fantastically clever you are and so on. What people care about in the world of work is, can you get results? Can you make a difference? Can you add value? And the way to do that is by hanging in there, being practical and using practical thinking tools.
And it's important not to, unless you're an academic, it's important not to overcomplicate things. And within the talking about how long a term is, we can keep it at that. How long is a term? We can say, and you jump to so many days. You could say, typically, it's whatever.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I would say that to move down a layer, you have to highlight or remove an assumption from before. So if I were to say 2 years, you're like, every day for 2 years, you might think, all the time for 2 years. And then we break it down that 2 years is actually in 3 terms. So there may be space in between the terms. And then next we say that a term is 2 months. So you have more clarification. And then just to say 2 months is 8 weeks, everyone knows that that's not a layer. I'd say maybe if we were saying 5 days a week, then you can remove that. There's another assumption. We've removed 2 days from the fact that we thought it was a week.
I like Corben's reasoning here. He is saying that each different level should be a meaningful division of the subject being analysed. By saying a week of 5 days, he is showing he is thinking towards a purpose rather than just chopping time up into as many unit layers as possible. It also raises the question of how much analysis is constructive without falling into analysis paralysis, which almost inevitably prevents progress and reduces clarity of the top priorities.
So now we can start doing a calculation.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're saying five days a week times, are we saying
8, I guess.
8?
Yeah.
8 weeks? That's the weeks, that's the days. I'm writing down what each... These things are called variables, and you're quantifying the variables. All right.
But do you see what I'm saying? I'm removing assumptions from, in order to move a layer, I think we have to remove a piece of information that we'd assumed before, like it was every day for a week or every day for a year or the terms for 6 months or whatever.
You're not so much removing, well, we can choose your words, removing assumptions. What you're doing is addressing the assumptions that are embedded. Would that be fair?
Yes, agreed. As opposed to removing them, addressing them.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. And we're addressing them and we're quantifying them at the same time. Okay, so we've got our 5 days, our 8 weeks in a term, times what?
Times are 3 terms.
Times 3, which is terms.
Times 2.
Times 2, which is years.
Yeah.
So 5 8s are
40.
40. 3 40s are
120.
And 2 120s are
240.
So 240 days. Or we could capture it as 120 days per year. Yes?
Mm-hmm.
So now what we've done is drilled down on your first piece of information, which is how long?
120 days a year.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now that should trigger something in your mind, because you're going to be on that course. Let's assume you went to that university, and you'll be kind of studying or working on that course for 120 days in a year.
I'm excited to tell you the price because...
Well, I want to come back to that, and we may get ourselves a little calculator because there's one just there.
We won't need one. It works out pretty nicely in terms of...
Okay. So 120... 120... brilliant. You found the price. I couldn't find the price, so well done. So it's 125. But what occurs to me is, how many days are there in a year?
365. It's less than a third of a year.
And so take away your 120 in a year, and you get 5,
2, 4, 5.
2. So, as it were, left over?
Mm-hmm.
Or you might put another way, free? Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Now, we might be miles off because we have made our own assumptions there, or our own estimates.
I like the word estimate. Do you think our estimate is likely to be miles off, which is a qualitative
Did I say
thing?
miles off?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think we'll be miles off. I think we might be slightly off. We're not going to have it 100% accurate, are we? Because I'm sure there's things that we haven't factored in.
If we wanted to be really pedantic, you could say we might be ages off.
Okay.
What's the difference between miles and ages?
One's a time period and one's a distance.
Yes.
And we're currently talking about time periods.
Yes.
So, okay.
But again, staying in the vernacular, as it were, but most people aren't as disciplined in their thinking.
If you're going for an interview, this level of analytical thinking and categories and so on may not matter at all, or it could be really important. A trained critical analytical thinker will pounce on the difference of variable type if you suddenly switch between distance and time, for example, or money, any of those other variables which often get mixed up. And so it's important to stay consistent within a given type of category for some listeners. Most normal people will think such precision as a waste of life. But anybody working in law, for example, will be very precise. Also in science, you have to be consistent or the calculations become meaningless. So it's up to you and the kind of work that you are seeking.
Don't say, hey, that's miles off. That would be like a common phrase for people. Hey, it's miles off. Yeah.
As opposed to don't literally mean that we are miles away from the answer.
Yeah. But you could, if you were kind of more like me, you'd keep your brain in the time slot. Because if you're going to do all this successfully, you have to discipline your brain to be
not stray from the subject,
which is time.
Yeah.
In this instance, okay.
We might be days off. We might be weeks off. Yeah.
Or ages off.
Yeah.
It's a nice generic. It goes right up there high. Yeah. It's as high as you can go almost with ages. Whereas we might be days off implies our estimate
goes from 240 to 250 or whatever.
Yeah. So there are different types of estimate. Mm-hmm. There's ballpark, as Americans call it, which is the whole place.
Yeah.
And then there's narrower estimates and narrow estimates. And you might preface an estimate by saying, I think it's just about that number of weeks or whatever, or within this range. Again, if you're estimating, it's more or less. Stop that, because I need to answer the